Hello, everyone. I'm going to be watching the leaders debate, the Australian leaders debate. Yes, that is correct. It is extremely fucking boring, but we're going to watch the leaders debate. I've already actually streamed so long today, but I have to do it. I have to do it. We're in a long haul here. The long haul being the game of streaming, and it may take me months, but we will build up the Drew Pavlou streaming network. Now, I'm going to ask somebody to join me. I'm going to ask John MacGowan to call in and let's live stream the debate. I hope he's going to be around. I've literally not organized anything, but I just thought it would be funny. The poor doggy. Hang on. Join my live stream. I've literally just tagged John on Twitter. Let's see if he joins in. G'day, Drew. Thank you, Steve. Are they arguing over who will raise house prices the most? That's the goal, I believe. That's currently the goal. I'm going to try see if we can get John MacGowan into this. And then that would be very interesting because you've got me who's a bit more centrist and John's a bit more conservative, and we'd just be considering, Australian politics from such a enlightened perspective. Only 3 people on YouTube. That's actually disastrous. But we've got 160 on Twitter. I hope John joins in. Hang on. Mate, want to join my live stream on the leaders debate? I'm going to send him the StreamYard link. Steve saying, Israel-Palestine isn't my forte. Here, bloody here, mate. That was a long debate, 4 hours. Drew, that Chinese guy pushed you over those women sitting on the ground. I don't even know what you're talking about, mate. Give it a moment on YouTube. Very true, very true. I hope John MacGowan joins us. I hope so. It would be very funny if he does. I'll get my invite link. Oh, he's going to join. This is going to be very funny. Okay, John's going to join in. This is going to be very powerful. A very fucking powerful stream. A lot of people are saying this. Yeah, Steve, I agree. Ukraine's actually a bit more of my forte too. Let's see. Okay. Oh, this is going to be fun. John MacGowan's going to join us in a second, my friends. That's going to be very good. Very interesting. Live streaming with John MacGowan. And apparently he's a little bit drunk, so it'll be quite interesting and funny. Okay. Let's see. I'll turn on the leader audio now.
Gas.
Can you hear that?
Raise gas. Gas is now $13. It was $30.
And when does it get cheaper?
When we came off.
You guys tell me, please, comment if you can hear that.
When do we see the bills come down?
Well, what we need to do is to roll out renewables, make sure there's energy security, make sure it's backed up by batteries, by hydro, and by gas. That is what all of the private sector is backing and investing in, not using taxpayers' money to fund something that they never put forward the entire time they were in office. Right, meanwhile, coal-fired power stations...
Sound is odd. Sound is good. Beautiful. We've got 5 people on YouTube. It'll build up. It'll build up.
And isn't in operation at the moment.
Some states are extending the life of these coal-fired power stations.
But that is what is causing the increase in prices is because of the uncertainty created by...
You're saying they shouldn't be doing it?
No. They need to ensure energy security. But what shouldn't have happened was 24 out of 28 coal-fired power stations announced their closure and no support for energy security during that time. And we can't afford to wait for the 2040s.
Okay, let me ask you both a question about climate change. We get a lot of questions about the concerns that people have over more intense weather events, be it storms, fires, floods, particularly in your home state, Queensland, Mr. Dutton. Do you accept that we are already seeing the impact of climate change?
Well, David, there's an impact. The question is what we can do about it as a population of 27 million people. So we should be good corporate citizens, good international neighbours, etc. But at the moment, China is building 2 coal-fired power stations a week. India obviously is burning a lot of fossil fuel. And what the government's doing, and Chris Bowen gave us...
Sorry, can we stick with your plans again here, Mr. Dutton? I understand the propensity to get stuck into each other. You're agreeing we are seeing the impact of climate change?
I think you can see that there's an impact, David, but I don't in my home state, you made reference to floods and natural disasters events. We were out in Thargomindah the other day. That has been a part of the history of our state, of this country, and
we need to. Worse, though? Is it getting worse?
Well, I'll leave others to.
What do you think? You're a Queenslander?
I'll let scientists and others pass that judgment. But
really, you're not willing to say this is climate change happening right now?
Well, as the Prime Minister refused to do the other day, to make comment in this regard as well, I don't know, David, because I'm not a scientist and I can't tell you whether.
Adam's not a scientist. Good to know.
The temperature has risen in Thargomindah as a result of climate change, or that the water levels are up in Thargomindah's latest flood as a result of climate change. And I think the honest answer for most people is that they don't know. And there are scientists who can provide advice. What I need to do as the alternate Prime Minister in this country is to put forward our plan about how we're going to help families. We need to transition, and we've spoken about that with our zero emissions technology. But in relation to power costs, which I think is a really important issue before we move on, the Prime Minister promised $275 reduction per year at the last election. It has never eventuated. He never mentions the figure. And at least Chris Bowen was able to give you a straighter answer than what you just heard before, because power prices have gone up by $1,300 and they are making no commitments in this election other than if you vote Labor, your electricity and your gas prices will go higher.
We've moved away from the impact of climate change a little there, but Mr Albanese, we do know that people in a lot of these areas where we're seeing more severe impacts are really worried.
Okay, I will find them on their Auslan stream.
One of our audience members, Ross, lives in Ballina. 3 years ago, his premium was less than
talk about the costs.
That's a lot better.
This is one of the costs. The cost to our economy, as well as the cost to our environment of not acting on climate change, of not being a part of the global solution, are severe.
Okay, I want to move on. Let's turn to the global outlook and an issue that's certainly flared in the last couple of days. Mr Dutton, yesterday you jumped on reports that Russia had asked to base some of its military aircraft in Indonesia. You suggested this would represent a catastrophic failure of the Albanese government for not seeing this, not knowing that it was coming. You said the Indonesian president had publicly announced this Russian request when he had not. Indonesia says there won't be Russian planes based there. Do you admit you got that wrong?
Well, David, the reference I was making shouldn't have been to the president. It was in relation to sources from the Prabowo government.
So was that a mistake?
It was a mistake. And,
Steve,
and I'm
I had to turn it off.
What we got from the Indonesian authorities in the reports, and the Prime Minister commented on these reports yesterday as well, was that the sources inside the Prabowo government confirmed that that was the case. Now, what we've seen in the last 12 hours or so is that the Russian envoy to Indonesia has confirmed that there have been discussions, and obviously there is a concerning closeness in that relationship. And I think the main point here is that the Prime Minister knew nothing of it, nothing of the concerns, nothing of the prospect. The Prime Minister found out about it through a news report, similarly to when the Chinese naval ship circumnavigates our country, and he doesn't know about all of the detail until a Virgin pilot.
That's an interesting face by Albanese there.
Clearly, Mr Albanese, there are expanding defence cooperations going on between Russia and Indonesia. They held some exercises in
What a powerful debate. What beautiful quality politicians we have in Australia.
President in Jakarta. Does this concern you?
Comment your thoughts, guys. Do you guys like the standard of political debate?
The alternative Prime Minister of Australia, who verbaled the Indonesian president yesterday. Indonesia will be the fourth largest economy in the world. They are an important partner of Australia. We have an important defence relationship with Indonesia as well. President Prabowo, I regard as a person.
By the way, guys, is my microphone better now?
Good relations there. And the idea that you just throw out these comments is just extraordinary. And the fact that we just saw a double.
Tell me, guys, is my audio better now?
Here, just shows that there's no understanding of the need for diplomacy.
I mean, compared to America, that's pretty good. True.
Seriously,
thank you, Steve. I appreciate it.
In a calibrated, serious way, treating Indonesia with respect, as we do other nations that we deal with.
Well, just quickly on that, you pointed out Indonesia is an important partner. You said President Subianto is
Just getting my phone, guys.
a personal friend. Why haven't you been to Indonesia since he became president?
Because I've been here domestically, but the president I have spoken with, and the president was here just before his inauguration.
When did you last speak?
He's a regular visitor. We speak regularly.
Okay.
And
have you spoken about this, about their cooperation with Russia?
Well, I don't broadcast the private discussions, but we had discussions at the senior levels of government to government, confirmed that Peter says, why didn't we know
Mike's back. Is this okay?
Something that didn't exist.
During
And what didn't exist, and Indonesia has confirmed the idea of a base being used by the Russian Air Force in West Papua.
Do you accept that, Mr. Dutton?
No, I don't. I don't accept that. And I think the Prime Minister's full of bluster here because he knows that he's got it wrong again in relation to national security. This is a government that's ripped $80 billion out of defence. And we've seen the relationship in relation to Indonesia and Russia grow closer. Now, Indonesia is an incredibly important partner. I met with the president-elect when he was out.
I just want to say thank God that the Conservatives in Australia are not pro-Putin.
I had a lot to do with the previous president in Indonesia as well. So we have a stable, solid relationship. But that means that if there is to be some change in the security settings in our region, that if there is respect for the Albanese government, of course there is not at the moment because I see this Prime Minister as weak, then why wouldn't there be a response, or why wouldn't there be, even to the Foreign Minister, to the Defence Minister, to say, this is a... Well, I think it's an important point.
Peter's suggesting that there should be a response to something that isn't happening. And this is the second of the failures that we've seen of diplomacy and of mature responses to international issues just during this campaign. When President Trump made the announcement that every single country in the world will be hit with tariffs, the alternative Prime Minister suggested that we should put defence and our defence relationship with the United States on the bargaining table. And it took John Howard to intervene to point out how unwise that would be.
We've made it 40 minutes in, and finally Donald Trump's name gets mentioned. He's not in this room, but he, of course, has a big influence on the future of Australia and the world. He has hit Australia with the 10% tariff. He started a trade war with China. He's treating friends and allies with disdain. Mr. Dutton, to you first. Do you trust this president?
Well, David, I said in relation to President Trump that I thought the scenes that we saw coming out of the White House, the treatment of President Zelensky was a disgrace, that it was appalling. And I stand by those comments. And we need to have a very strong working relationship with the United States. Of course we do.
Do you trust him was the question?
Well, we trust the United States, and I don't know the president. I've not met him. The Prime Minister obviously has been able to.
So you're not willing to say you trust Donald Trump?
I don't know Donald Trump is my point. My point is that who I trust is the Australian people, and my job is to stand up for our country's interests, which is what I did when we negotiated the AUKUS deal with President Biden.
Okay. Mr. Albanese, do you trust Donald Trump?
Yeah, I have no reason not to. I've had a couple of discussions with him. In the last discussion, we agreed
Is this okay, the audio?
Words that he would give consideration, great consideration was the words that he used. And he did that. In the end, he made a decision as part of the US administration to put these tariffs on every country. We got the lowest amount, but we made it very clear that that was an act of self-harm by the
Albanese has to say trust Trump.
The United States enjoys a trade surplus with Australia. So all this will do is put up costs for American consumers.
Just while we're at it, do you trust China's president, Xi Jinping?
I have no reason not to either. In terms of the discussions that we have had as one-on-one discussions have been important. China's our major trading partner. 1 in 4 Australian jobs depends upon trade. It is in Australia's national interest to have a good economic relationship with China. We have different political systems.
We do.
And that means different values, and we have very different values with China. But what I've said is we'll cooperate where we can, we'll disagree where we must, but we'll engage in our national interest.
Mr. Dutton, do you trust Xi
Well, David,
Jinping?
again, I don't know the president of China, but I believe very strongly in the relationship that we have because of the reasons the Prime Minister outlines. It's important for our economic stability and our sovereignty. In government, we negotiated 11 free trade agreements. This government's only been able to negotiate one. Of the 11, one was with China. I want to see
John MacGowan here,
and I want to see trust.
What's up?
Up for
this debate sucks.
Relationship.
This is one of the worst political debates I've ever seen.
And we can build the relationship.
Oh my God. I love how right now they're both trying to be more pro-China than each other.
So I haven't done business.
I'm rooting for Albanese because Albanese's got that 2020 Biden energy. Like you can tell he's got dementia. The less Albanese talks, the more I want to vote for him.
They have all resulted.
Dutton's talking too much
on both sides.
John, share the link to your followers
as a result of that $20 billion of trade with China.
I hardly have any, but I will. I'll share it.
The free trade agreement that we signed.
Send me the stream link and I'll put it up.
In which your last term, there were no discussions.
Well, again,
there was no contact, no phone calls, no meetings, no trade.
Well, there was a diplomatic freeze.
Well, in terms of the trade relationship, it was something that we established through the free trade agreement.
It did stop.
Well, there were difficulties in relation to 5G, David. So talk about that period. We took a decision as a government to exclude high-risk vendors from 5G because we wanted to protect our telecommunications system. China was upset in relation to that. If the Prime Minister is suggesting, because it was a bipartisan position at the time, that wasn't an appropriate step for us to take in our national interests, then he probably should say
Let's come back to Donald Trump. It's a while since you've had a conversation. We've had this tariff put on us of 10%.
That's so bad. They're competing to see who can be more pro-China.
Some sort of deal around critical minerals is on the table. The critical minerals reserve, strategic reserve. What is that, Mr. Albanese, and what exactly are you offering Donald Trump?
Well, we'll engage diplomatically, not through a TV interview, but we have put forward
and not through Joe Hockey
to the United States. The United States have put forward publicly.
Who I don't think Dutton talks to.
About Australia. We won't budge on the pharmaceutical benefits scheme. We won't budge on biosecurity issues. We won't budge on the media bargaining code. We will stand up for Australia's national interest because that is important. So we'll continue to engage with the United States. We hope.
You said this yourself about the critical minerals reserve being put on the table.
That's right.
So what is it?
Well, a critical minerals reserve is just that. It's a reserve of the critical minerals and rare earths, which Australia has.
It's weird because compared to Dutton, Albanese actually looks good, but he's not actually changed how he talks at all.
The United States is very keen to get access to critical minerals and rare earths. The trade dispute with China is particularly concerning to many in the US economy.
So we reserve this for the United States?
No. Well, we'll negotiate with the United States rather than with you, David, with respect.
I'm going to try.
Respect.
Mr. Dutton, you've said you'd get a deal.
He basically is when he's talking to David Spears.
No one has managed this.
We love David Spears, don't we? Tell us your theory of David Spears.
Well, we did actually in the 45th.
The dumbest guy's idea of Australia's smartest guy. It's also creepy that he hasn't aged in the last 15 years. David Spears looks no older and no younger in the last decade and a half.
As we did last time, we were able to leverage.
That's true, actually. That's true.
Unfortunately, sadly for our country, Ambassador Rudd can't.
The guy went grey back in the late 1990s.
Well, it means as we did last time.
Why do you reckon he's struggling so much, Dutton?
With whom we have a relationship, contacts both.
I don't know. I actually feel like he must be nervous. Like I've seen these guys in the wild a lot, and the amount of talking he's doing, like for politicians, and excess verbosity is kind of an indication of nervousness. So I think he's kind of panicked. I mean, he's trailing, what, fucking 6 points in the polls right now.
Do you think that's just because of Trump?
Again, the mistruth that was spoken before.
I think there's a bunch of things. I mean, he fucked up massively today on Indonesia. He's not cut across on anything for like 2 weeks. He opened strong, and then I was speaking to someone yesterday who said there's never been a bigger 3-week move in an election campaign. Like, he's not only losing the campaign, he's losing the campaign worse than anyone else ever has.
Really?
So, yeah, I think that's affecting him. a little bit.
I think
the Trump stuff.
Like no one's ever gone backwards this much before. Like he opened the campaign thinking he was going to win, and now he's like definitely not going to win.
So all I'm saying
I
is,
thought he actually
unless preference flow really turns his way, I really don't think there's a hope for him. Like his primary just isn't high enough.
under a coalition government.
I mean, unless they've got something for the final couple of weeks, like unless there's some dirty yarn that's going to come out on Albanese, like talk about how many times he cheated on his wife or whatever. Like, I don't know what they've got. I can't imagine what they would possibly have that would actually stand up, though. I think at this point they're best off just trying to save the furniture.
The Americans came to our
it's a
aid
disaster
in
for
the
them,
Battle of
eh?
the Coral Sea. We've stood with America.
John Hewson was
every
worse.
battle. It is an
That's
incredible
what somebody
relationship.
says in the
Well,
chat.
I think in relation to critical
Hewson actually wasn't worse. Like Hewson lost because of one bad interview on the 7:30 report that became kind of notorious afterwards. The rest of his campaign was really good. This has been a shit show every single day. Like Hewson had one bad day out of 30 days, and it cost him the campaign. Dutton has just had bad day. Like name one good day that Dutton's had.
Is there a need
Like,
for any
well, we used to
that's
do this
true.
in campaigns. Like at the back of the 6 o'clock newses, you'd rank the newses, you'd like rank the day. And I can't think of a single day this campaign that Dutton has won. He's never won one.
In the interest of both Australia and the United States and the United
And he's
But
going to
the thing
luse
is,
this
Elvis
debate
is
too.
charismatic.
All the chips
Elvis
No,
is
he's
not
not.
really
He's not. But
Yeah, he's boring as
But,
fuck.
but at this
so-
point, when you're not charismatic and you're up against a complete muppet, then all you have to do is shut your mouth. And look at Albo. Like, I'm going to look at the transcript of this afterwards, and I guarantee you that Albo will speak 30% less than Dutton
We have
has.
people in the United States.
Like,
I
he's
like
just
the thing that
talking
you,
slower.
working on this project.
And
I liked your last one,
bipartisan support.
John. When
And what is
you
extraordinary
were just
is,
literally asking the question to
questioning of that
ChatGPT, and it
does
came up with the
nothing
exact
to
same stuff that they were
advance
saying.
Australia's national interests.
Dude, I've been saying this for so long. I did that. I did that experiment with ChatGPT back in. So we're up to like 4. I think I did that experiment first when ChatGPT 2 launched, and we just gave it like 2 days worth of Hansard and told it to then produce an extra day's Hansard based on, and instead of using like just a prompt, we just use notice as emotion. So you just like type in the notice emotion as the prompt, and no one could tell the difference. And that was 2 iterations of GPT ago that no one could tell the difference. So now we're up to ChatGPT 4. ChatGPT 4 could definitely be a better Australian Parliament than we actually have.
Air Force to pay for some of the first payments.
Gee, it's actually okay. They're talking about AUKUS now. Let me put it up a bit.
Increased defence spending by 57.
Yeah, this is
billion
your bag.
dollars. We had a
This is my
defence
stuff.
strategic review that found, put
Drew's
simply,
moment.
that we need more things that go bang. And
Drew
that's
is
why
going
we
to
have
single-handedly get
missiles that we're not
Indonesia
just
invaded
buying,
by the end
we're
of this
actually going to
campaign.
make them here in Australia, and that manufacturing begins this year.
Okay.
We have had serious discussions with the United States going back to the Biden administration about critical minerals, about the role that it plays in
Honestly,
industry.
I think sadly it's not going to happen.
We
AUKUS.
have
I just think it's over.
engaged constructively, and it doesn't.
I think we'll get something
to
better.
try to score
I don't think
a
it's that.
political point on what is something.
I wouldn't cry about
that
it.
we backed.
I just don't
We
think we're going to
backed
get the
when the
submarines.
Morrison government came up with this.
Well, we weren't gonna get the
proposal.
submarines for
We backed it
12
and we're
years
putting meat on
anyway.
the bones.
Let me come back to
I'm actually
your
going to talk to
campaign.
Billy
can't-
OM in
Neither of
2
you have visited an Indigenous community.
I'm kind of legally prohibited from talking about the submarines since they did accuse me of stealing submarine secrets at one point.
Well, I can
But-
point to many trips that we've made.
You're the,
to East Arnhem Land, to
assistant
Alice Springs,
administrator-
to
the
many
assistant
communities across the
media
country
advisor
that,
to Bruce Levin,
campaign,
the chief
Yeah.
submarine
just made
negotiator.
up
Yeah,
the last
chief submarine
days,
secret
that's been
thief.
made up of-
Yeah, Bruce took all those
Yeah.
submarine secrets.
Bruce was the
last
key.
3 years,
Bruce
we
was
went
the
to
top
Alice Springs
negotiator.
and
Many say.
We spoke
Yeah.
to a lot of people.
Bruce
after
is
the
on
forces
a
were
he's
aware
on a Collins
people
class
were
submarine right now.
devastated
That's
because
he's going
the
to
practical
Antarctica
assistance promised by the Prime Minister
To meet
hasn't
up with
been
Hitler.
delivered. The
Beautiful.
country was
To meet up with Hitler in
divided, or the
Agatha.
attempt was made to
Yeah.
divide our
A
country
lot
on
of
the
people
voice.
saying this.
So I think the Prime Minister, I think the government.
That was literally my evidence to the National
this area of
Anti-Corruption
Let's look at where
Commission.
it's left us. I want to show you this. This is from the latest Closing the Gap data.
Oh, the Turkish.
The
Okay, so it's
suicide
close the
rate
gap now.
amongst
Oh, they're doing
Indigenous
Aboriginal stuff
Australians, the
now.
line on top, the
Beautiful.
non-Indigenous
We should get Mungo
Australians, the
Manic
line
in
at the
here.
bottom. The gap is
We
getting
could. We actually
wider.
could. If
Ask,
he's around.
ask
And
them.
this is
Ask them what
kids
they're doing
in
with the
out-of-home care.
fossils.
Once again, Indigenous.
Also,
That
has
is
anyone
frontline
mentioned? Has
non-Indigenous
anyone
kids
mentioned
the bottom
Keith
line. That
Windshuttle
gap is
yet?
just not budging. It's getting a little worse as well.
They
Mr.
need to do
Albanese,
they need to have a obituary to
politics
him
has
in
been
the
able
middle
to
of the
close
debate.
these gaps. What's your plan now?
I was in the campaign where we were doing
Other side of
obituaries for
politics
Bill
has
Leak in
done
the middle of the campaign. Like,
well
that's
enough.
not.
for
That's not even the
First
weirdest
Nations
thing
people.
they've ever
that
done.
Abbott?
That's just a fact.
It was the Abbott
That's
one,
something
yeah.
that breaks my heart.
Beautiful.
But what we did
Bill Leak
post
dying broke
referendum
my
was I
heart.
went to Ghana. I spoke about economic empowerment of Indigenous people. So we have a series of programs. Firstly, taking what was essentially a work for the dole scheme, creating real jobs with real training and real outcomes. There's something like 40,000 Indigenous people, for example.
I kind of like
from
it. I've warmed to
We're
it.
putting additional funds into health, particularly areas like
True, yeah.
dialysis. We have a 10-year program on remote
Because he's so
housing,
old.
on education. We are
Somebody asked, is
pumping
Aboriginal
record
Australia just
funding
like
into
Latin
schools,
America? I mean,
and that
there is
particularly
similar
will
levels of
benefit
disadvantage, but
areas like Cape
it's
York and
2 to
the
3%
Northern
of the Australian
Territory.
It's more like
and
Native
Victoria
Americans.
as
And
well.
I think it's more like Native Americans than blacks.
Called for a voice, treaty, and truth-telling.
Australian
Have you now
blacks are the
moved on from
Lebanese.
that completely?
Well, I went to Ghana and I spoke
That's an
about
interesting
what our
theory.
priorities
Explain
were, and
that
I
to us.
spoke to you
13% they have their
on
own
the day,
accent, their
that I
own
gave
like
that
music.
speech.
Yeah, they're
We
more like
accept
Lebanese.
the decision of the
Controversial
Australian
view.
people in that
You've
referendum.
now moved on from all of that.
Well, we accept the decision that was made.
You can
though.
tell when the debate
We
sucks when
put
you just like
forward
move off
a
topic
proposition
completely.
that was asked for.
Like no
We
one's
took up
paying
the
attention at this
gracious
point.
request
So do we
of
need an
First
Indigenous
Nations people
representative?
made
Bobby?
at Uluru in 2000.
I mean, wasn't that
Well, he
the
tried.
voice?
Remember, he
And
tried to
you
do that with the
during that
multi-billion-dollar
campaign
voice referendum
agreed that
that
current
Oh, there
failed
was a
so
referendum.
badly. He
Yeah, sorry.
nearly lost the
It's
election.
not working. How would you fix it?
Well, I think it's
I mean-
heartbreaking to see those figures, and I share the sentiment of the Prime Minister
I
that
just don't understand why it's
despite
on
both
topic
sides
of
of
the leadership
government over a
today,
long
given
period of
we had a
time, we've both
referendum
been
on
in
it.
Parliament over 20 years, there have been, in every discussion I've had and every
I really
expenditure in
doubt
committee and
Dutton
government
has
and
ever met a
opposition,
black fella in
a
his
desire
life.
to invest as much money as
To be fair to
is
Tony Abbott,
required
he
to
went
see
out to the
those
remote
terrible
bush
Oh
communities.
yeah, Tony loved
outcomes
that shit
improve, and
because
it hasn't happened.
when
And
Tony would go out
as the
bush, that's
crisis
when they would
pointed
leave
out,
him
there
alone.
is a lot of concern about
So,
the way
so
in
Tony
which
would spend like
programs
half the
delivered within
year
communities,
in
and yet there
like
are some amazing
Tony.
stories.
This is a true
Where you
story.
see
Like Tony
90%
Abbott once just
attendance rates at
bailed
school.
on
You
the
see a
government
functioning society
and
where people are
left.
going to work,
I think
where
he
housing is
left
available,
Barnaby in charge,
where there are
and
much
he
better
went to
health outcomes.
Wadair for
And
like 3 weeks.
there is a leadership
Beautiful.
aspect
Right,
within some
right
of those
before the
communities.
Russians shot down MH117. That was the only reason he came back. I think he was due to be out there for like 4 weeks, and it took a Russian surface-to-air missile to get him to come home.
I still think with hindsight, his threats against Putin was the best moment of the Tony Abbott prime ministership. And nobody realized at the time that it was actually amazing.
Well, and also that he did actually follow through with it. I mean, Australia contributed more intelligence resources to the investigation than anyone else. Australia was principally responsible for proving, well, Australia and the Dutch proved that it was the missile was fired from a SAM crew within the Russian chain of command, and proved unequivocally that
The Australians who did that.
Russia.
That's amazing.
It was Australia. It was Australia that did it, and. I mean, up until that point, I mean, even Barack Obama was not willing to go on television and say that Russia had invaded Ukraine in 2015 until we proved that they had.
That's
Yeah,
another
it was.
world,
They were going on TV, and I mean, there's even examples. I can't remember the name of the guy, but the Obama era press secretary was even repeating the little green men line. The fact that you had these like soldiers in Donetsk and Donbass who were obviously in Russian uniforms, like they were wearing like Russian Gorka uniforms with Russian equipment, but they weren't wearing flags on their uniforms, and the Ukrainians were calling them little green men. And the Russians, the Americans were just repeating that line in late 2014, early 2015, because there was. Yeah, I went there in 2018 when it was nice. Yeah, I understand it wasn't so cool when you went. Pardon?
What part of the Donbass?
Well, actually, it wasn't the Donbass strictly. It was Donetsk that we went to. So we traveled to the end of the Dnipro River, and then we went into the actual city of Donetsk. which I guess is in like the Donbass region, but we weren't in.
I'm pretty sure that was occupied in like 2014.
Vision where we can run our economy successfully.
No, you can still drive down there like all the way until 2022. I mean, you couldn't like fly a Ukrainian flag, but yeah, you can still drive down there. But
really,
that was in the 2019 election, they still had polling booths
last 3 years. And as I said,
which is the whole reason we were there.
Can you answer the
question? So you went behind Russian lines?
Were 3 years ago.
At that point, it wasn't a Russian line. At that point, it was the Donetsk and Donbass Republic. The Russian line at that point, the Russian line was Crimea and Sevastopol. Yeah. So the actual Russian line, where the point at which you'd cross, which was Russian territory, was like 150 kilometers south of that, as you'd go down into the actual Crimean Peninsula.
So
in
Ukraine
2018,
did have Poland.
I want to make sure that we can invest into defense.
yeah, in 2018, Ukraine had theoretically that whole region, but the Donetsk and Donbass had declared themselves independent. But it was the only part that the Russians had completely annexed and was it wasn't even a no-go zone. You could have gone down there. It's just you had to get your passport stamped. And none of us were willing to do it. But if you had gone all the way down to the actual Crimean Peninsula and crossed over, yeah, you were at that point in Russian territory. But Donetsk and Donbass wasn't. In 2018, you could still drive all the way through the Donetsk and Donbass to the old Russian-Ukrainian border, if you want. Which was
crazy.
And I wanted to do that because when you get to that point, you're actually only about 500 kilometers from like fucking Kazakhstan. Like that's the far most eastern corner of Ukraine. You could conceivably have driven there.
Wow,
it would have been dicey, but
now it's literally like a full-blown you cannot even get close. That's crazy.
Well, now it would be the actual bottom southern end of the Dnipro, right? And so the bottom of the river.
And Russia
would be the limit, and then
Russia.
So I would. I mean, if I was there now, I would assume that anything east of the Dnipro River would be essentially Russian, and anything west would still be Ukrainian. But back then, you could.
Very much for joining us.
I've got a comment here. There was a timeline where the Ukrainian military were holding such as Donetsk International Airport. Where did you cross?
Joining us at home, and after this debate, some post-match analysis.
Where did I cross, or where did you cross?
Yeah. Oh well, I didn't cross anywhere. I mean, I went to they've got a brief break. Okay. Oh, is that it? Hey, is it done or is it?
No, it's done. No, it's over.
Is that it? That was it.
Yeah, dude. It was like 1 hour. Yeah. It started at 7:30.
That was fucking.
It sucks.
That was short. That was
Drew, if you want to wrap it up, but like my view was that sucked and that you should vote for independent.
Well, let's have a bit of post-match. I think we need to have a bit of post-match analysis. But let's first get to the Ukraine thing because that was interesting. Gee, we literally just started and it's already done.
Yeah, we stopped watching it at the end because it just got so boring.
It did get really fucking boring. Like, hang on. Okay, before we do the post-match analysis. Let's have quickly tell us about your experience in the Donbass. Where did you cross?
Well, there was no crossing back then. So the only point at which you would cross into Russian territory was if you went all the way south and you crossed into the actual Crimean Peninsula. So by 2018, so 4 years after the first invasion, the only territory that Russia held like ironclad, where they had I mean, I never went down there, but I assume they had like a booth where they check your passport when you crossed, was the old crossing into the Crimean Peninsula from Sevastopol. But you could still at that point, basically drive south along the western bank, the Dnipro River, and then turn east. And you could still drive into what was Donetsk. But it was dicey. Like at that point, like no one really was in control of it. Like the Donetsk Republic had declared itself, and there were militias that were running Donetsk. Like when you drive in there were like BMPs, and I can't remember the name of the Russian tank that they'd been given by the Russians in 2014, but like there were tanks and BMPs just parked on the side of the road, like blown up. And they weren't blown up by enemy fire. It was because the Russians had given them, like when they invaded when the Donetsk and Donbass declared themselves independent in 2014, all the gear that the Russians had given them was this like surplus winterized gear, like all these APCs that were designed to be driven around in the middle of winter. And so that was really effective for the first 6 months of the conflict in 2014. But as soon as summer hit, they all just stopped working and the tracks fell off. And because in the heat, the summer in Ukraine gets up to like 38, 39 degrees. And so these things just fell apart. And so you drove down this highway where there's like tanks and all these cars and stuff on the side of the road. And that was kind of the main way you knew that you'd crossed over into the conflict zone. Also, the fact that there were like telegraph poles that Azov had strapped people to and set them on fire. But there was no like sign that said you are now entering Russian/rebel territory. But when we were there for the 2019 election. Well, in the lead up to the 2019 election, the one that Zelensky won. I wasn't there when Zelensky was even running, but like in the lead up to it, the Ukrainians were still convinced that they could effectively campaign in that region.
That's crazy. It's such a different world now.
I don't even know if they did. Like by the time we left, I mean, the view of every foreign consultant and advisor was that no, we absolutely cannot campaign here because there's car bombs going off every day, and it's not safe. It's not safe to have an election. So I don't know the extent to which they actually ever did actually even put a polling booth down there, but we drove down at least. Like we saw it.
Bloody hell! I'll get up a map of. Sorry.
Yeah, if you get up a map, you can kind of see what I'm talking about because.
Yeah, let me get up a map of Ukraine. The Australian election was just so fucking boring that we just started talking about Ukraine.
It's just so boring that we're now talking about Ukrainian politics. So if you start at Kiev, so I can only really navigate if you start at Kiev.
Yeah, okay, we go to Kiev.
That's where we drove from.
Hang on,
start Kiev, and then So because the thing about Ukraine is it's all based on these like old Soviet oblasts. So if you start at Kiev and you just start going south and you follow the Dnipro River south.
Yes.
That's the Dnipro River, right? Keep going south.
Gee, it's like an inland sea, that reservoir.
It's huge. It's massive. So you're now getting towards what is now so stop there where Dnipro is in the middle.
Yeah.
So I don't know for sure, but like I think from where the Dnipro city is right now, I think like basically everything to the right of that, so everything to the east of that is now in like seriously disputed territory. But if you keep following the river south, and you can kind of see what I mean about when I was there.
Zaporizhia.
Yeah, so keep going even further south from that till you get to the sea.
Oh, okay.
So keep going south, and then you go all the way down.
I went to Kherson.
So where you are here, like where you are like now, to the left of that, to where the actual Crimean Peninsula was, which is red here.
Yeah.
So this was the bit that they stay. Yeah. So that was the bit that was in Russian, where that red line is.
They call it the Russian Federation back then. Yeah.
Yes, so that was the bit that the Russians had in 2018, but everywhere north of that was effectively disputed, and like
this whole era, of course, this was never really. This was all post 2022.
They only took that after 2022. So this is where we went. This was all like who fucking knew. And one of the funny things I joked about with all the guys I was there with is like when the war started, how they all started putting sticky tape on their helmets and their body armor,
yeah,
like
even the Ukrainians have to do that.
blue and yellow for Ukrainians and red for Russians, and we were laughing, saying,
Yeah, because all
"Man,
the
I
kit's
wish
the
they had."
same.
Yeah, they had done that in 2018 because like there were multiple times where we drove past cars and like convoys of dudes, and like you'd slow down and the drivers and security would be like, are they our guys or are they their guys? Like we just didn't know.
Holy
And then
shit.
you'd speed
Holy
up
shit.
and then you just drive past each other with no idea. Like it's not like there was
Holy
like a
shit.
central radio net for Ukrainian militias in 2018. Like, and everyone wears the same uniform. Yeah, that was those were the only scary bits. Like it's fine when you actually got into the towns, but the scary bits were on the road. And also because the road was where you could see the most obvious evidence of fighting. So you didn't really know where if you were in somewhere safe or not. But
I went to Odessa. I went from Odessa to Mykolaiv, and then I went down to Kherson, and I was like, I'll actually show you where I walked around in Kherson. It was near the stadium, I think. So I think I was around here in Kherson. And it's kind of scary because like they basically treat the riverbank as like the front line there because the Russians are right behind it. And then they're like literally just doing the human safari. Like they're literally just sending drones constantly. So yeah, I actually legitimately walked down this section. I think I went to this park. I even saw the park. And then I actually went to the square as well. And the square was where there were big scenes of jubilation when they liberated it and everything. But it was really fucked up, especially when you get closer to the riverbank. Like everything here is abandoned. Everything. Like you just
isn't that where they just had the thing with the tunnel? Was that where the tunnel was? Where they tried to walk through the tunnel? I think because
the Russians. I saw. Okay, I know where that was. That was up near Kursk. Actually, I believe that was near. Kursk.
Right, it was to the north.
I think the tunnel thing was. So I think they've actually done the tunnel thing a couple times during this war, and like I think they did it near Bakhmut maybe, or like in the east. Apparently, was actually originally successful, and yeah, tunnel was up near Sumy. So it was literally Sumy was where there was the horrific missile attack the other day. Where's Sumy? Where is Sumy actually? It's somewhere around here, Sumy. I remember it was like kind of occupied at the start of the war. But yeah, and then I went from Kherson, we went up to Kivy, and then we were gonna go to Zaporizhia, but we couldn't go on that trip. We went from Kivy, we went up to Dnipro. Where's Dnipro? And then stayed in Dnipro, and then we went through to Pavlograd, and then we went. I think the closest I got was there's Dobropilia. That's where I saw like a massacre site, and Pokrovsk. That was where like there was a lot of fighting when I was there, and they actually they flew a drone over Pokrovsk to show us what it was like. So we were like, what's the distance there? Like maybe 20 km, maybe. Like, and you could hear the artillery. It was actually pretty spooky.
I sent one of your videos to a buddy of mine who's from there, and he now lives in Poland now. He used to be a political staffer for the health minister in Ukraine, and he was like you'd call him a dissident, basically, like one of the guys who worked for the government, or not for the government, but for the opposition during the Maidan protests. And I sent him the video, and he just responded and said, "Yeah, I'm not going back. Fuck that."
Oh fuck, man! No, it was so bad.
Not a great advertisement.
Oh, dude, yeah, no, Dobropili was fucked up. Like you'd go down the streets, and like there were so many buildings that were just like collapsed from the ballistic missiles. And then they literally flew a drone over Pokrovsk for us. And I'm gonna release the footage soon. We've just got to like edit out like the background and everything. But yeah, they literally showed us like the burning street by street. It was crazy. I've got a comment about Callan. I went with, you know who I met while I was there? I met Callan Robertson, who used to be the filmmaker for Tommy Robinson, but he's like no longer kind of like with that crowd. I think he's like formally broken with them all. He was a nice bloke. Okay, how about we'll keep the Ukraine map up, but how about we just quickly go through 5-10 minutes, John, of like just analysis of how shit Australian politics is right now.
Man, it was so shit. Like I actually did a podcast today with Fred Paul, where we talked about this, and we probably spent like an hour and 15 minutes trying to nut out why it is so bad, why is it so embarrassingly bad, and
it's just like
we
frozen
still
in
didn't
time,
come to look.
It really is frozen.
I mean,
in
look,
time.
like tonight was a really good example of it. I mean, I think tonight, I mean, from what I saw before I jumped on here and what little bit we actually paid attention to, I mean, Dutton is actually running like a state political campaign. Like it's that level of like he doesn't get the fact that you're gonna have to run the entire country if you become prime minister. He doesn't seem to grasp that. Like it's like he's literally running a state politics campaign where you can just, you know, throw brickbats and smash things up and it doesn't matter. His conduct today on Indonesia was really the best evidence of that. I mean, Indonesia is not our greatest ally. It's not even our best friend. Indonesia are just really good
as we
neighbors.
both know, John, our greatest ally. John, as we both know, our greatest ally is Israel, of course. But sorry. Yeah. But no, sorry.
You know,
going back to
Indonesia is this country that when people say that Australia is the lucky country, right? There are so many aspects of that I mean, we legitimately are. Like there are so many things that we could never have planned for. Like you could never have colonized Australia and known that it was going to be so rich in minerals. You could never have colonized Australia and known that your nearest neighbor was going to end up being this completely unique Muslim majority country that, unlike every other Muslim majority country in the world, has no extraterritorial ambitions, has a completely unique and essentially democratic constitution, and is going to kind of have your back on every major political conflict of the 20th century. And that's Indonesia, right? And you know, one of the other magical things about Indonesia is that, you know, we're in the middle of this kind of housing immigration crisis where the government is bringing in 1.8 million people per year.
Amazing
have you ever looked at how many Indonesians come to Australia?
It's very little, hey, it's so small.
Indonesia is basically a third world country. Like most of it is a third world country, but there are no Indonesians sitting there going, oh yeah, I'm going to go to Australia for a better life. No, Indonesians love Indonesia. It's a country of nationalists, and they don't want to leave. They don't want to come here. They don't want to cause problems for everyone else. And we've been so lucky to be their neighbors for the last 100 years. And the dumbest thing you could possibly do is fuck with them. Like the idea that Peter Dutton would come out and go, oh, I'm calling out the Indonesian Prime Minister. Fuck off. Like, you don't call out the Indonesian Prime Minister. The Indonesian Prime Minister exists in a vacuum so far away from Australian politics. We only exist because we don't fuck with his shit and he doesn't fuck with our shit.
Someone goes, is it still Widodo? No, it's Prabowo now.
It's Prabowo. Prabowo is so much more based, man. If you thought Widodo was based, man, you got to get Prabowo pilled. Right, because this guy was like a general. Is based.
Prabowo was like a general, wasn't he? A general that was
before he was. I mean, like they were war crimes, but I don't know if they were heinous. Like they weren't heinous. I mean, they were heinous in the like Nick McKenzie ABC definition of war crimes. But like, I mean, but this is the thing. This is the crazy. One of my favorite things about Indonesia right now, right, is so like in the West, we fought a war against.
May have been involved in the crassest massacre of more than 200 civilians. That's pretty fucked. But
I'm just going to go out on the limb and say it wasn't 200. I mean, 200 sounds a bit high to me. Like Wikipedia editors just start at 6 million and work their way back. So I'm not.
Oh, mate, that's fucked up. Listen, it says the region is now known as the Valley of Widow. I think you have taken a bit too much to drink, John.
No, I'm Prabowo pilled, man. I'm 100% pro the Indonesian president. Also, man, you know, like they had Jamar Islamir running around, right, doing terrorisms. 44 Australian. What was the death toll from Bali? Like I think it was 44 Australians died.
It was like 9.
Died at Bali, right? And you know what the Indonesians did? They fucking killed all those guys. And do you know what happened last year?
Good on them for doing that. Yeah.
Not many people know this. Not many people know this happened last year. It was March last year, March 2024. Indonesia did like a bunch of like Christmas 2023 was like a very dark time to be an Islamic terrorist in Indonesia. Like these guys, I think it's because they had an election on and they decided they were going to clean house. So they arrested all these Jamaat Islamiyah guys. Then in March of last year, they frog marched all the senior leadership of Jamaat Islamiyah into the headquarters of the Indonesian security forces in Denpasar, and they forced them to do a press conference where they dissolved the organization and swore an oath to Paskaila and Indonesia.
Oh, yes, the dissolution. Holy shit.
Yeah. So there is no more Jamaat Islamiyah right now. Indonesia did that. It took them 23 years. In the West, we're still fighting Al Qaeda. Right, we haven't frog marched the Al Qaeda leadership out and made them swear allegiance to the fucking flag of the United States. Man, don't fuck with Indonesia.
How did they do that?
I don't know, and I don't think we want to know. I don't think anyone wants to know how Indonesia did that.
That's crazy, to be honest.
When you go back to the Cold War and find out how Indonesia handled their communism problem.
Oh my god, man! Like, bloody hell! There's still the what was that book? I read that book. What was that guy who wrote? The Jakarta Method. That was yeah.
Dude, I'm extremely fucking Indonesia pilled. I love Indonesia. I would never live there, but also Indonesians don't want to live here. That's why we're such good friends, right? That's why they're the best neighbors a country could have.
Isn't it crazy that that like it's basically like there's basically no coverage of Indonesian politics in Australia at all. Like you actually,
and the only reason we're covering it, the only reason it's being covered right now is because there was a story in Jane's, and you know the background of this is fucking insane, right? Jane's it is the single most expensive news subscription in the world. It costs 1,400 Australian dollars. About £690. So with the story about the planes being based in Indonesia was broken.
That thing.
Yeah, it was broken. It was broken by Jane's Defence Weekly on their website. But it's paywalled behind a $1,400 a year subscription. There's no month-to-month subscription on Jane's. You got to pay $1,400 to read that shit. And none of the journalists did. The journalists based all that reporting on the first two paragraphs that weren't paywalled. The rest of it was paywalled. And when you go, I got a friend of mine who had a subscription to send it to me, and he said, like, dude, read the whole thing. And when you do, you realize, like, yeah, they had sources inside Pradowo's government that said we've been approached by the Russians. Yeah, there was no one had reviewed it. Like they weren't going to do it. Like, I mean, there was no chance the Indonesians were actually going to do it. And, you know, I mean, I've heard that this might precipitate Pradowo withdrawing from BRICS. That his view may very well be that this long term, this shit's just not worth it. Because Indonesian foreign policy does not exist. Indonesia's foreign policy
it's completely
is
not aligned.
Indonesia's foreign policy is we just want Indonesia to exist. They don't have really relationships. Like they have a relationship with us because I mean Australia is generally shit, and they have a relationship with the United States, and they have, you know, who actually weirdly Indonesia has the best relationship with Israel of any Islamic country in the world. Like,
does it?
When all the it's a weird thing. When all the other Islamic countries.
Do you remember when they tried to ban the Israeli under-20 football team or something like that, and then they basically FIFA basically withdrew the World Cup from them? Like
Yeah. They have to walk this constant line because domestically they do have like a lot of really active, like hardcore Islamist organizations, but like the Indonesian political elite, if you Google it, like look at when you look at the Indonesian political philosophy, Paskaila,
the
Indonesian politicians and the Indonesian armed services swear their oath to the Unitary Republic of Indonesia first, and then to God. Right, it's the only Islamic country where their soldiers. Pancasila, yeah. It's the only Islamic country where this happens. It's completely unique, and like this is what I mean about Australia being the. This is why Australia is the lucky country, because out of all the Islamic countries in the world, imagine like not living next door to this one, the one chilled out.
John, you know what's interesting? I actually swear, like I often forget that Indonesia is a Muslim country. Like I often forget that.
Oh yeah, but that's because they're kind of also because for Australians, like our kind of direct interaction with Indonesia is through Bali and Papua and the islands, where actually they are not Muslim majority countries. But like I've been to Jakarta. I spent 4 days in Jakarta in like 2019, and it's crazy because you go out to bars, like there's fucking amazing like bars. There's like a thriving music scene and stuff. And there's like an actual bar and a bartender, and there's drinks and stuff behind the bar, but no one drinks. Because like the majority of people are Muslims. Yeah. There's never been if you want to get fucked up, Jakarta's one of the nicest places to do it. Because there's no wait at the bar.
It's interesting because yes, we've got a comment here. Imagine if they were as hardline as Iran or Saudi Arabia. Like my God, that actually would be pretty scary if they were like that hardline.
Do you know what? What's really interesting about Indonesian jurisprudence is actually legally they are probably more hardline than Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia's dichotomy compared to Indonesia, like at the end of the day, the king is the caliph. Like,
true.
You know, they're essentially an absolute monarchy, whereas in Indonesia, I mean, Indonesia's political system is kind of like if you locked a bunch of Muslims in a room in the year 900 and told them to come up with the Westminster system just based on memory. Like it's not, It is essentially our political system, but through like an Islamic lens without like 1,000 years of civil war and bullshit. That's kind of what they came up with.
They do have a pretty strong democracy.
Well, it's actually like not a democracy. It's a unitary republic, just like Singapore. So they don't strictly have an opposition, and that's where a lot of their internal tension comes from. They're also like they have incredible corruption issues, but they've kind of, more or less fixed them in the early 2000s. One of the reasons they were able to fix their corruption issues is because they actually had like it's not really noticeable in the sense in comparison to us, but they had a dramatic increase in their standard of living from like about 1995 to the early 2000s. Foreign investment, raising the median wage, like things did improve dramatically. And how that's filtered through politically is that a lot of their corruption issues that they had in the late 1990s and pre 9/11 kind of just got evened out by the fact that nowadays, like their parliament is predominantly, I guess, middle class. Like they're not. So the guys that they're bringing in, like Pradowo is like, like former military majors, like senior public servants are now running the show, as opposed to, kind of peasant robber barons and stuff that did under the Suharto regime. So it has changed a little bit for the better. But this is the thing. This is just my key argument with Dutton. Like,
holy shit, that's real. Someone was talking about Puputan, which is Balinese mass ritual suicide. I didn't even know about that.
Yeah. This is why Dutton should just leave him the fuck alone. Like, that's the best approach with Indonesia is, just don't fuck with them. They won't fuck with us. They have no ambition. We invaded their territory in 1999. Under Interfest.
No, I don't know. The East Timor, I do think, honestly, I think that was actually one of the best things John Howard did, which was like, intervene in East Timor.
Sure. That's one interpretation. But if you were the Indonesian government, think about how chilled out the Indonesian government were about that.
Keating fucking hated it because Keating was like full hardcore Indonesia forever. He loved Suharto. And he was like, he was complaining that John Howard had fucked up all his entire grand strategic policy by going into East Timor. Like Paul Keating was like hardcore John Mearsheimer.
If you read Dark Victory by David Marr and Marion Wilkinson, it actually goes into a lot of. Yeah, you got to read it, man. It's one of the few books by Australian journalists I ever. I think Marion wrote most of that book, but yeah, it's one of the few really good books by Australian journalists about anything important, and that does go into a lot of that period about like what was going on behind the scenes with Australian foreign services and Indonesia, and like basically Indonesia, I think, just didn't want East Timor at that point, like that. And so the Fretland militias that we were kind of like defending the East Timorese from, you know, like they were nominally. Like they were saying, like we support the Indonesian government, but the Indonesian government didn't support them. And
wait, sorry, say that again.
So when we went to East Timor, the opposition to East Timorese independence were these guys called the Fretland militias, and they were these like
militias. Yes, I'll get that up.
Yeah, so they were independent militia groups who swore loyalty to the Indonesian government. But the Indonesian government was not necessarily loyal to them. And as far as the Indonesian government were concerned...
I think this wasn't Fretland. I think it's another... I know what you're talking about, the militia groups.
Well, were the Fretlands were the ones we were supporting then? Or what?
Who were the ones was the one that we were supporting. I'm trying to find out which was the one... I'm looking at
which was the one that was shooting at us. I thought it was the Fretlands.
Yeah, Australian Intervention East Timor.
Yeah, but they're the ones that were actually in opposition to East Timorese independence. Like, they weren't like they were loyal to the Indonesian government. The Indonesian government.
The really pro-Indonesian militias. Here we go.
Yeah.
Wow. Let's see. Atarak.
Yeah, these were the guys who were like
massacre. Wow.
Yeah, but it's a different culture, you know. Like, I mean, what's a massacre between friends? You know,
fucking hell.
I don't judge people based on their massacres.
The scorched earth operation. Fucking hell. No, they were there's I think there are some people who say that like in proportional terms, like East Timor was actually the worst genocide of the 20th century because it was like 30% or 40% of the population that were killed.
No, that was the one in 1976. Yeah, that was the Whitlam period one. That was the famous Kissinger.
Whitlam loved it. Whitlam supported it, which is crazy.
Which was
all the Aussie boomers who like love Whitlam, like the greatest bloke in history, and like he was supporting.
Yeah, and he killed. He like straight up killed, just casually killed 300,000 people, and I mean, like they were probably communists. I mean, if you're going to be real. Like,
look, I haven't read into it, but it's genocidal to me. But like, fucking hell, it's just funny that like all these like Australian boomers who like their god is Gough Whitlam, the most moral man of history, and then he like actually just ended up supporting like East Timor genocide.
Just like, did a casual 300,000 genocides. I mean, at one point in the 70s, I mean, Gough Whitlam was getting political donations from Saddam Hussein. Like,
it's so nuts.
Look up the Kemlani affair. Like,
you know what's funny? I've had, oh my God, I'm so pissed off about this shit. Like, you know, like the cult of Whitlam that like fucking friendly Geordies and stuff have built up. Because like, if you just like look into it, like, you know how they've got this grand claim, like the CIA took him out and everything. Like Whitlam was like full hardcore pro Suharto, like supported them going into East Timor. Like he was like pretty hardcore pro. Like he was Labor, right? He fought the communists within the Labor Party, wasn't it? Wasn't that the case?
Yeah. Man, that whole period is wild, and it's kind of like our equivalent of like the Soviet Dark Age. Like you can't even get any really good kind of information about it because all the journalists were supporting it. So nowadays, I mean, unless you're like me and you have friends who are in like, you know, the kind of anti-communist right of the Liberal Party in the 70s, and most of them are dead now. Like no one talks about what really happened back then, because it's just like this hagiography about Whitlam, and
he's like treated as a god, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I was joking with a Liberal today I had lunch with. And I said, like, the funniest thing that could happen in this campaign is that John Howard dies.
Oh no, that's sad. John, you've said so many mean things in this podcast and so many controversial things.
It's just
don't say these
but
things.
do you remember in 2019?
Yeah, Bob
Hawke died, right? And and poor old Bill Shorten was so sure that like outpouring of Australian kind of grief for like reminiscing about the Hawke days, that he was gonna like ride that wave into government, and the poor bastard didn't realize.
I thought it was gonna. I thought it would lead to. I thought it would impact the election. It actually didn't at all.
Well, I mean, I actually think it did. I think it did improve his margin a little bit, but not enough. Like, I think the only hope for Dutton at this point is that John. I saw a video. Julian Lisa, actually, if you're on Julian Lisa's Facebook, Julian Lisa put a video up of John Howard talking. And I hadn't seen him live in a really long time. I did actually see that. Howard looks really, really bad, really bad. And I was thinking, yeah, shit. Imagine if Howard parks it in the middle of the campaign.
No, he's still kicking it. Like, he's still speaking well and everything. Like, let me try find John Howard.
Yeah, he put it on Facebook. I haven't seen it on Twitter, but I did see
the video that you're talking about. When I was in Herson, I saw a place that was called like Howard's Bar, and I was like, I actually filmed it. I was like, Johnny Howard, hello to you, like from Herson.
But yeah, it's funny that he didn't put it on Twitter. Like,
oh gee, actually, I should put that up. You know what, John? It's been a very interesting thing. I think it's very sad that basically by the time we started up, it was over. But
yeah. I watched the first half. I watched the first half before I jumped on, and I think I did a few tweets about how lame it was. Like, nothing jumped out.
It was
honestly like if you want to do like the gay like debate wrap up, like who won, I would say like just Albanese won because he just shut up and he didn't look desperate and weird. Like Dutton looked like he was on a Hinge date where he really wanted to get laid and it wasn't going well, and he was just trying to like bombard people with like a wall of text. Like he was like an autistic guy on a Hinge date. Like, it sucked. Mind you, like there were some cool things that came out of it. It was the first time we've actually got Dutton on the record talking about nuclear this entire campaign. And it hasn't made me
trying to not talk about it.
Yeah, that's what Albanese meant the other day when he was saying like, "Oh, Mr. Dutton won't talk about the N word."
Oh, that's what he was talking about. What the fuck was Albo thinking with that
nuclear? Because I tweeted that, and everyone just thought I was being racist. I mean, I was being racist. I deliberately cut the video right at that point, but that's what Albo was talking about. He was saying that Dutton just doesn't talk about the N word anymore, and tonight.
Like, do you reckon they came up with that line, or just Albo just fucking freelanced? Because that's a disaster.
I reckon they're freelancing. I was on Fred Paul's podcast today, and we were talking about this, and I said like, I was saying that like the secret to success in Australian politics is you need a cult around the leader. You know, like there's a cult of John Howard. Even to this day, I know guys who worked for John. Guys who worked for John Howard in the early 2000s. You go out and talk to them now, and they still like call him Mr. Howard. Like they're still obsessed with him. In Victoria, there's like a cult of Dan Andrews. Yeah, like the Labor has like.
Me growing up was just my dad always going like, Johnny Howard, he's the man. Like Johnny Howard is like. He's a safe pair of hands, mate. And like that was like just my entire political knowledge growing up.
The problem with, and it's a problem for both Dutton and Albanese, is there's no kind of cult of personality around them. Like I know like most of the senior guys in the Liberal team, and if you got 2 beers into them, none of them are going to say like, I'm a Dutton man. I'm going to die in a ditch for Peter Dutton. Like, and it's the same with Labor.
It's supposed to be based like. This is the funny thing, right? Like there's all these like leftists in Australia who try to say like Dutton's Australia's Trump and stuff like that. And like, you know, he's not like that at all, really, though.
No, he's not like that at all. And, you know, I mean, he's never was like that. It's just, you know, I think he's mostly just kind of someone who doesn't think through his actions that much. I mean, a lot of the things that he was most known for before he became leader, I think, were things that, if he had his time over again, he might not have done. Like, they were just things he did on the spur of the moment.
Oh, you mean
and
stuff
we've
like
seen
guns
that. And things like walking out of the sorry thing, like, and we've seen that over.
You're talking about Dutton, not Howard. Sorry, no, that
Yeah,
stuff.
and I think that if
he regrets that.
if Dutton had his time over a lot, like, he probably wouldn't do those things. But and then there's been times in the campaign where he obviously has just had a brain fart, and like when he called Albanese limp-wristed, and it seemed like forced, and then he backed down from it, and
they forced him to apologize.
After 40 minutes, I counted how many minutes from when he said it to when the media ran the story to when he apologized was 40 minutes.
That was crazy. That's like, that wouldn't even be in like the top 50 insults in American politics, probably, of the last, at the last election. And like,
I mean,
I didn't even know
this is the thing.
I didn't even know limp-wristed had like the gay connotation. I didn't even know that.
He's trying to make this case to the right. Like, this is the sad thing about Dutton. Like, he's running a campaign that no one's ever had to run before, where you're trying to get like mainstream Australia to vote for you, and you're also trying to keep like your insane right wing base, people like me, and you're trying to keep them on side. And he's failing at it. So he ends up, like, the best he can do is calling Anthony Albanese limp-wristed, whereas like Donald Trump like goes into the debate and says, "Your wife's as ugly as a dog." Like, and Dutton, he can't do that. Like,
if Trump was here, he would have straight up gone like, he would have gone elbows goes to the Thai massage parlors. He would have gone.
If Donald Trump was running against Anthony Albanese, he would have walked into that debate tonight and he would just said, "Shut up, Tony. Shut up. I hear you like to sleep with your babysitters, and your wife didn't like it, and she left you. She's ugly as a dog." Like, that's what he would have said. Like, he would have called him like Little Tony.
For sure.
Little Tony.
The thing is,
his wife left him.
I swear to God, John. I swear to God, I didn't know that limp-wristed was like supposedly like gay connotation. I actually didn't even know that's like supposed to be gay, like an insult against gay people.
I don't know. I say slurs all the time, so I don't keep up with it. But I think, I didn't
even know this. I just thought limp-wristed meant you're like.
Remember that like 90% of Liberal staffers are gay. Like, and not
it's
like
an interesting fact.
They're not comedy gay. They're legitimately gay. They're Tom Hanks in Philadelphia gay. And
can I think there's that really good one of Eric Abbott's. What did you share it? It was like Eric Abbott's with his staffer who was gay, and he wouldn't say the word gay in front of his staffer, and it was just like really, really awkward.
Eric's entire office was gay. Yeah, that's Josh Manwachi. Yeah.
Let's watch this one.
I didn't know at the time that Josh was gay, but then he showed me pictures. Look at Josh's face. I tell you, it's a really funny story about me and Josh Manwachi.
He was nice to me. I met him once, and we talked about China and the Uyghurs and stuff. He was quite nice.
He's a nice guy, actually. Eric's a really nice guy. Josh Manwachi, not so nice. But
I don't know who that is, but this is just classic, though.
Josh was identifying as same-sex attracted, and when he told me that that was the case, I said, "Look, fine, thanks for telling me. Nice to know." And I think we shook hands, and that was it. It was a relatively brief conversation, and from my perspective,
that was the end of it.
Nothing.
It was not anything spectacular, and I think there's been more shock and outrage from people when I say to them, "I work for Senator Abetz and I'm gay," than what there was in the conversation. So
Josh is like super gay though. Like Josh is like a predatory gay guy.
Look, like I'm not going to get.
He's like one of those gay guys in prison that you don't want to be locked in a room with.
John, I don't want to get super defamation here, but like let's just, it's a beautiful spot by Eric. Let's get.
You say same-sex attracted. Do you have arguments about that? About the language?
Not at all. Not at all.
Poor guy. I've actually never seen this. I'd heard about this video, but I'd never actually watched it. That was really confronting, and I feel sad about having
The
seen
way
it.
you talk. Wait, this is the
What
first
I
10
didn't
seconds in.
know at the time was that Josh was
Was
identifying as
the
a
eyebrows.
same-sex
The eyebrows
attracted,
do it
and,
all.
when he told me that that was the case, I
This is
said,
so
"Well,
good,
fine,
man.
thanks
You've
for
got to
telling
send me
me.
this link.
Nice
I've
to
got to get
know."
this. I'm gonna
And,
I'm gonna put
I
this
think
link
we
into
shook
so many
hands, and
group
that was
chats
it. It was
tonight.
I'm actually crying, like just the way he talks is like.
That's how he talks. There's a guy. There's this one staffer who's one of the best staffers in Australian politics. A guy, and he doesn't work in politics anymore, but he's a guy called Brad Stansfield, and he was like former chief of staff to Will Hodgman. He now runs his own like really successful PR company, but I worked with him in the 2010 campaign, and no one on earth does a better Erica Betts impersonation than Brad Stansfield. Like we would just be sitting at our desks, like working away, like because we were working like 20-hour days, and out of nowhere, he would just start reading press releases in Erica Betts's voice, and we'd all like fucking lose our shit. And the only good impersonation I could do was Michael Photius, who is like weirdly like a more effeminate Erica Betts. And so we would sit at our desks all day. He would do Erica Betts' voice, and I would do Michael Photius' voice. And Erica Betts and Michael Photius getting into more and more funny situations as the day would get on. One day, it was one of the only like quiet days of the campaign, and we had like it was like 10 TVs in the campaign office, and one of them it was only one TV that was actually playing like the actual TV. We had like the news and ABC and on all the other TVs. And it was like 9 o'clock at night, and Channel 9 was running Girl Interrupted, you know, the movie with Angelina Jolie and Brittany Murphy. And because we had the sound off, it had teletext on. Brad and I sat there all night where he would do Brittany Murphy in Erica Betts's voice, and I would do Angelina Jolie in Michael Photius's voice. And because we didn't have the sound on, we just had the teletext on. And so like the whole office was like pissing themselves laughing, looking at us while we were doing like a public performance of Girl Interrupted in the style of Erica Betts. And it's
ChatGPT could never do that.
It was 15 years ago too, so no one had camera phones back then. Like we were using those old Nokias in 2010 and Blackberries, so no one videoed it. And even now, like because election campaigns have like the average like size of a campaign office is like 400 guys, and so even now, like I bump into people around politics, and when they think of like me like 15 years ago in that campaign, they said, "Oh, that's right, you guys were like getting everyone laughing doing the Erica Betts impersonation while reading to Angelina Jolie's lines from Girl Interrupted."
I just realized as well, John. Look how good this. Like it clips off the title, so just look how good this fucking headline is.
Erica Betts refuses to say the word gay in front of his
homosexual. What the fuck?
Josh. What I didn't know at the time was that Josh was identifying as a same-sex attracted, and when he told
Josh
me
ended up
that
so good. Fucking hell. It's actually so good. This is the best. Is John still here? We're still with us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. I got you.
Yeah. How many viewers do we end up getting? Jason the 13th just said, let's get to 100 live viewers.
So cumulatively on Twitter, we had 4,500. So like we probably had about like 40 people watching live on Twitter, and then like about 15-ish on YouTube. So it's all right.
Oh, okay, right. That's not too bad. I mean, that's more people than I would have had just yelling at my television. Hey, before I go, remember, at some point this week, let's catch up and do the end of that podcast.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, because people may not know this, but I recorded a podcast with John, and we did about half of it, and you've got to just basically film the end. But yes, John.
We should do that. Yeah, we'll do that later this week.
That was actually hilarious. I do have to say, John. to avoid being cancelled by Mossad, I have to condemn any comments you made in this video about Israel, etc.
Yeah, any comments? I didn't say anything about Israel. I probably did. I endorsed Indonesia's anti-communist policies in the late 1970s, and I apologize to any Indonesian communists who are offended by the fact I laughed at them getting thrown out of helicopters by Suharto. I'm sorry.
As a human rights, as a member of Amnesty International Human Rights Actors, I cannot endorse. But thank you, John. Wait.
I thought you got kicked out of Amnesty International.
No, yeah, I did get kicked out. You know what they did, John? They so retarded. You know what their reason was? It was actually amazing. They said they kicked me out for so-called homophobia, and it was because do you remember that there was that guy who was making Gertrude posts? It's like an Ozpol meme, right, from Twitter, where someone was impersonating a boomer who had a horse called Gertrude, and he'd be like,
yeah, right.
He'd be like, oh, Gertrude's all right today and shit like that. And I just started joining in, and I was like, oh yeah, Gertrude, I got locked in the Beat gay nightclub the other day in Brisbane, and it was a horrible experience. I was stuck in there for 20 hours. I was just taking the piss, right? And they screenshot that, and they're like, this shows Drew indicates a lack of respect towards the LGBTIQ plus community. I was like, what the
man? Fuck? But see, they can't do that to us now. The days of cancellation are over. We can say the slurs now. I mean, I'm not going to say them now because
don't get me sued or anything. But
I'm not going to say them. But I just want your audience to know that we could say them if we wanted. we are allowed to say them.
But I was fully expelled from Amnesty International. It was actually really. I wonder if I was probably the first person in the history of Amnesty in Australia to be expelled. It was very strange.
I think you probably were. I don't think they're known for expelling people.
Yeah, I know. They just people will become a member and they'll just they'll forget about it and just still be on the membership books 30 years later. And they actually had to fucking kick me out. It's actually amazing. All right,
man.
We better.
I'm gonna go. Now, I'll talk to you soon, brother. All right.
See you, mate. Bye. Beautiful.